Thanks so much for hosting me, everybody. This takes a lot of work to create these things. So please give a round of applause and a thank you to Lauren and Jesse, because it really is a lot of work behind the scenes to make these things happen and bring speakers to you. So I definitely encourage you, if you're interested in project management, and supply chain, to join the club. And I see that Lauren has put her email address, her Penn State email address, in the chat. So if you're not already a club member, please check it out. You get to interact with speakers like me and learn, but you also get to put that on your resume and LinkedIn profile, which is really important to show employers that you are taking your career seriously and to the next step. So definitely consider joining the club and taking advantage of, networking with people like you, but also, learning from speakers in the industry and your career services folks. So awesome. So you can see here, we're all at home, many of us, because of COVID-19. I've been on the board of the American Lung Association out of Philadelphia for quite some time. I spent about 20 years in the Philadelphia area before buying my retirement home very early in the Florida Keys here. And so I've been quarantined here in Florida. But if you or any of your loved ones have asthma, COPD, any lung disease, or struggle with smoking, and or you want trusted COVID-19 resources, please check out lung.org. You can check it out from anywhere in the world. And if you'd like to get involved, we're always looking for volunteers. I actually got recruited onto the board because of my project management skills, which was a shock, because the gentleman that called me was somebody that I had worked with in the Fortune 500. And I had to we had a lot of stuff that went on the project. And you just never know what people think of you until later they call you and say, hey, do you want to be on the board? Because of your project management skills. I was like, is this Mike? It was shocking. And so almost 7 years later, I'm still on the board, and it's a really amazing organization. It's the oldest health-related nonprofit in America. And no matter where you are, so in central Pennsylvania, I see many of you are sitting in central PA. They're also always looking for, volunteers to get involved. So if you have any kind of passion there, or you want to get, some volunteer experience on your resume, let me know. I can put you in touch with them anywhere in the country. Brooklyn, New York too. Okay. So a lot of people ask me, why did I create this game and how did it come about? So I'd like to share that with you. So like I said, I spent about 20 years in Philadelphia. And one time I got this phone call from a veteran guy named Jeff, who is just awesome. And, he never gets nervous. He's unflappable. He was a veteran, right? And so when he called, he sounded a little concerned, and that concerned me a lot because this guy is always even. And he said, listen, I had a trainer not show up to one of our most important clients in Philadelphia, and they have a building on the skyline in Philadelphia, so quite an important client. And he said, we have to save this account, and I need you. And I know you don't usually teach the PMP boot camps anymore, but would you do it for me? And Jeff is one of those people in my life that it's hard to say no to. I'm sure you have people like that in your life also. So when they ask you for a favor and kind of beg you, you say yes. So I did that. And on Tuesday of a 5-day boot camp, my classroom of very seasoned project managers, these people had been around the block, they were lost and confused. And what was really bad about that was they had basically been told by their bosses, you will get your PMP or else. And so they were really, really nervous. And of course, I was already in the situation where I was trying to save this account for my friend. And so I went home and I thought, how can I teach this, in a way that will be helpful to them and make it easy? So, because what happens is when you stare at the PMBOK guide, and back then this was the 4th edition, it was a mere 500 pages. The 6th edition is now over 750 pages. It looks like a giant fire-breathing dragon. Like, how am I ever going to slay this thing? And so what I did was I created these cards. So you can see here these cards, and you can see string, putting from like define scope to create WBS, right? And I was showing them, that outputs of define scope go to the create WBS, et cetera. And the anxiety balloon in the room started to deflate. So that's when Project Flow was born, because they felt so much better and they really started to get it. So since then, I've had the privilege and the pleasure to take the game all over the world. You can see, we were sold out in Florida. This is in the beautiful Lehigh Valley at Olympus headquarters at the top, at a PMI chapter there. And then at the bottom in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia as well. So I've taken it on the road, and everybody always loves it and has a great time with it. So when we were in person, that's what we were doing. But don't worry, there's a way to get to the game not in person also. So like I said, the current edition, 750 pages. I turned it into one page and made it a game. In the chat, answer this question. How many process groups are there? A, 5, B, 10, C, 49, or D, 59? How many process groups are there? Do you know this? Do you know this? Let's see. Let's see how we're doing here. Right? We have a B, an A, a B. How many process groups are there? Christopher is making sure we get his answer in. A, 5, good job. Okay, A, B. Okay, lots of A's and B's. Get your votes in now.
Guys, look real closely at the question. The question is process groups.
Process groups. Okay, and the answer is, drum roll please. The answer is A. There are 5 process groups. Okay, so here's the layers. Here's one excuse me, one layer of the game, right? And this is the way that I talk about process groups. So initiating is the first process group. And you can see that the background of the game tells a story, okay? And in the background there above, behind the initiating iceberg, you can see that there is blue sky, because in the beginning, there is blue sky thinking. There's generally nothing, right? But a vision for what the project will be. So here you can see the blue sky for that blue sky thinking, and the vision of 2 beautiful buildings in Philadelphia. These are the Liberty Place buildings. And then once that gets approved, this beautiful vision for these 2 buildings gets approved, we move on to planning. And in planning, the project manager's job is to help the team figure out a way to deliver on the vision set in initiating. And behind planning, you can see the blueprint there of a real building that my architect friend worked on. And so in planning, this is where the project manager would likely say, hey guys, I want us to be successful, so let's do 1 building at a time. So he, might suggest reducing that scope to just let's do 1 building at a time. And then once that's approved and the plans are approved, then we get into executing. And in executing, behind executing, you can see the building actually being built. So in executing, that's where the work of the project is really happening. That's where the team is full on working hard on the project, and the project manager is helping the team to work against the plans that were set in planning and toward the vision that was set in initiating. And all the while, the project manager is monitoring and controlling the work against the plans. So you can see here that the iceberg is over top of several of the pictures, because monitoring and controlling is not the 4th step. It's not the 4th step. It's not the 4th step. Did you get that? It's not the 4th step because it's happening the whole time from the very beginning to the very end. And for whatever reason, if I don't say it like 3 or 4 times, people miss that. It's not the 4th step. There's your 5th bonus one. And then if you do all of that well, you can close on the project and deliver the product, which is the building here, one of the buildings here, set based on the vision that was set in the beginning. And you can start the process again with the second building, which is why this thing goes in a circle. So anytime you have a project that's broken into phases, et cetera, you can continue on back to initiating onto the next phase and start again. So that's basic. That's the PMI way in a nutshell from a process group standpoint. So there are 5 process groups. Okay. How many knowledge areas are there in the chat? Please give me an A, 5, B, 10, C, 49, D, 59. How many knowledge areas are there? Let's see how you do on this one. All right, looks like many of you are getting this one. And yes, Hunter, you should know this because you got the micro certification. Thank you for joining. Good to see you here. Yes, it is B, 10. Knowledge areas are 10. And the way that I depict this in the game is by colors. Okay, so many of us, are very visual. So most people are visual learners. And this is part of the reason for the background, pictures that tell the story of the process groups, but it's also, so the colors actually also are stories. And the reason why I use stories is because storytelling is an ancient way to learn. When we were all cave people sitting around a fire and telling stories, that's the way we would learn. And so it unlocks this like ancient part of our brain where we can remember better. So it's much easier than remembering a definition. So each one of these, and I won't go through all of them for time's sake, but just to give you an idea, each one of these colors for each of the 10 knowledge areas was chosen very carefully to tell a story. And in the microcert class, for example, I encourage you to come up with your own story. If you have a better story that works better for you, then great. So I'll give you the background on the gray one. It says resource right now. So in previous editions, the gray box was actually human resources. In the 6th edition, they changed it to just resource because now we might have, robots, right? And there are other resources besides the humans that get projects done. So resource, is gray. And the way that I think about it is, multiple ways. So I say, hey, resource is gray because, it used to be human resources. Humans have gray matter, right? Sometimes, there are gray areas in dealing with them. It's not always black and white. And also, if you do project management long enough, you will get gray hair. And so depending on what works for you, that's my story. One of those stories might work for you, maybe not. I had a student in Pierce College who piped up and was like, and concrete is gray. And, you need concrete to build your pool because we were working on this pool project idea. And so, yeah, concrete is gray too. Whatever works for you works for me. So each one of them is carefully chosen to make learning all 10 knowledge areas really fast and fun. So in just a minute, you can understand what really is going on there through these color stories. Okay, so you can see here the first 5. So I'll tell you another one. So scope is blue because, again, remember in the blue sky thinking, there's all these great ideas. And then the project manager's job is to bring all those great ideas down into something that can actually be delivered. And scope is the thing. Scope are the things, the deliverables, the actual tangible, verifiable things. That's what scope is. And I'll tell you one more. Communications is gold. And communications is gold because PMI says 90% of your job is communications. And it's absolutely true. I've never been on a project where somebody accused me of communicating too much. So communications is really, really important, which is why it's like gold. And so the story is that I've never been on a project where somebody's accused me of having too many communications, and nobody has ever said that they've had too much gold either. So there you go. If you want more of these and you want to play another game, I love gamification. I think you're getting that idea. You can go to the driving coach page on PMOtraining.com, and there's this little widget powered by Facsumo where you can play the game and pick the knowledge area colors if you like. How many processes are there in the 6th edition? A, 5, B, 10, C, 49, D, 59. How many processes are there? All right, very good. So for those of you who are participating, you are getting it. The answer is C, 49. Excellent, good job. So the rectangles on the placemat, which I call it a placemat because if you get the physical version, it's actually a placemat you can eat your noodles on. And so you can see here, there are all these different boxes, which are, again, it's not my fault, right? The PMBOK guide has 49 processes, so we had to organize them in that way. And so here we'll just focus in for a moment on monitoring and controlling. And this includes the sneaky triple constraint triangle. So you can see there that scope, schedule, and cost are around the edges of the triangle. This is often called the traditional triple constraint, although I've seen many versions of this thing. But scope, time, and cost are often talked about. But we know in projectland that there's also quality. And what I like to say is quality is in the center of it all. And the reason is because that if you put quality in the center of that triangle, it makes a lot of sense that, if you want lower quality, the triangle can get smaller. If you want higher quality, there are more things to do. It's going to take more time and cost more money. Okay, so if you're working on a project to create a heart monitor for somebody that you love, and it's going to go in that person, you're going to make sure that that thing works 100% of the time. So there's going to be a lot more to do. It's going to take a lot more money and time to make that happen. If you're creating a cell phone for Dawn, that's going to definitely start to go wonky before the contract is out. That'll be smaller quality than the heart monitor. So there'll be less things to do. Less time and less money there to create it. Okay, so that's the sneaky triple constraint triangle. So each one of these is a process. Each one of these boxes is a process. And the numbers, so I'm often asked, well, what do the numbers mean? So if you were asking that question, then you were right on. And if you didn't even notice there were numbers, that also happens too. But the numbers are specifically for the PMBOK itself. So for instance, if you want to know more about validated scope, you would go to section 5.5 of the PMBOK and be able to read all about it. Okay, so that helps you, navigate between the overview of the process, and there is no overview of the process anymore. All the diagrams look like spaghetti diagrams. Sadly, the PMBOK guide is black, white, and gray all over. There is no color there to help you, focus your eyes on things. So that's why I created the game, originally starting in Philadelphia on the wall, and over the past 10 years, working with clients all over the world to make it better. So the 7th edition, here are 7 quick facts about it. So the book has 2 resources in one. There's the ANSI standard, which is why they have to keep updating it to stay current. And then there's the PMBOK guide, which is the framework for applying the standard. And so the second fact is that the 7th edition now reflects the full range of development approaches without preference for one over another. And what happens in real life, which I'm glad that PMI is acknowledging, is that we as project managers do need to know as many tools as we can so that we can apply the right tool and suggest the right tool for the job to our project teams. And that's what they're emphasizing here, which is really great. So it's all about, when you're in a real project in a company, it's really all about, the outcome. What is that vision set in the beginning for the project? And then, your job is to help the team figure out how to get there. So it's all about, envisioning those outcomes and figuring out how to get there. So that's pretty cool, because that's actually how it works in real life. Fact number 3 is the 7th edition, and this is where my mind is getting blown, you guys. The 7th edition is moving from process to principles. Okay, and so now they're talking about 12 principles. Well, you saw, if you were looking closely, right, you saw we talked about risk, quality, stakeholders as part of the knowledge areas before. All right, so this is part of the mind-blowing thing for me. It's like, okay, well, this looks like a kind of a mix of ideas here with these principles. Fact number 4 is they're moving from 10 knowledge areas to 8 project performance domains, again, focusing on outcomes. So here you go again. Now they've got stakeholders, team, planning, uncertainty, which is really risk. We talk about uncertainty and risk a lot. So again, blowing my mind a little bit because it's so, so different. So fact 5 is they are including this whole new section called MMA, the models, methods, and artifacts. So, and they're also creating a digital platform to have, all of those things out there and available, from what I understand. Okay. Fact 6 is about tailoring. So just like if you got a new suit or a new dress, you might go to the tailor so it fits just for you. Their idea here is that they are giving more help and support and guidance for how to help you, the project manager, help your teams tailor the approach for the environment and the work, which, as a professional project manager for many, many, many years, I was certified in like 2004 under the 2nd edition, which makes me an old lady in this space. That's what we always had to do in real life. So they're acknowledging this, which is pretty cool. So fact 7 is, I just checked this morning. This was a picture from when it was announced for March 31st release. None of us actually believed, by the way, it would actually go out on March 31st. Call it a intuition, I don't know. But it's actually listed on Amazon today, as of today, right now, as a release on May 1st. So it's not even out yet. However, if you want to learn more about the 7th edition, you can find, there are several videos out there about, the sneak peek type of thing behind the scenes on the 7th edition. So you can get more on that and dive deeper into, some of the facts that I shared. So I want to tell you, a little bit about the PMP and the CAPM, since many of you asked and included your interest in that. So the PMP exam structure changed at the beginning of this year, 2021. And the previous exam structure was all based on those process groups. There was, a lot, it was really based on the process groups, and the percentages were, how many of the questions were on those process groups. Now there's a new exam content outline, which you can find on PMI.org, and that is organized differently. So now they're calling it 3 domains: the business environment, process, check that out, 50% is the process. So, and 42% is people, okay? And in the new PMP exam, it's 50% agile and 50% hybrid-ish, 50% traditional, which we just went over, which is, what my game is based on, and 50% agile and hybrid. Okay, so they're making us learn agile and hybrid now to pass the PMP exam, even though there are people in the construction industry and other industries that may actually never use agile approaches. So I find that fascinating. There's a question breakdown here. You can get all of this as part of the ECO, the exam content outline, but you can see here that, they are 50% is what was always there, and that's going to be 100 questions. And then there's agile and hybrid questions as well. So you're definitely going to have to learn agile and hybrid. approaches for the new exam if you're taking the PMP. And there are always, anytime you're taking an exam like this, you have to think about what are they asking me and how do I answer? So there are questions on domains, tasks, and enablers. And this is what, you have to think about what you should know, what you should do, or how to do the tasks. Okay, so that's, something to think about. And there are some things that are the same in the new PMP exam, like it's still 4 hours and it's, there are still, now in the virtual, they never did virtual before COVID, from what I remember, but now you can take it virtually from home. And so, what you need to know, which is really great, is you'll be sitting in the exam and you'll be like, I have no idea what they're asking me. I never saw a question like this before, and all the thousands of questions I took. And then you have to go, don't worry, this is probably one of those questions they're testing, because 25 of the questions are not scored. They're just using them for research to figure out if there are questions that should be on the exam in the future. So really 175 of the questions are being scored. Okay. And here's what's different. Here's what's really, really, really different. There are new question types. It's not just the multiple choice questions anymore. In addition to those, there are drag and drop questions, graphic or illustration questions, and short video or scenario-based narratives. So it's definitely different this time around. If you go to Project Guru Academy, our new brand out on LinkedIn, you can see, we say where the learning never stops. And it's really true. The learning never stops, especially if you become a PMP, then you have to keep up your PMP by getting PDUs, professional development units, by attending, webinars and meetings and there are many, many ways to do it. But they now require us, they didn't used to, but they now require us to include learning in each of the talent triangle categories. So it was technical leadership and strategic and business management, and now it's going to be process, people, and business environment. Not really that much different, but just something to be aware of if you've heard of this before. The thing about studying for the PMP is that the PMBOK guide is not enough. I can't emphasize that enough. The PMBOK guide is not enough. Here are some exam references that they recommend. So what all of this means, and one of the questions was, what's the best way to prepare for the exam? What all of this means is, if you have the money or your employer will fund you, go to a boot camp class. Because the boot camp classes have all of this stuff combined in there, and it's the most efficient way to learn and prepare for an exam, because you can actually, and especially if you are anything like me and you need to ask a question of a real human being, and have them help you figure something out, I recommend the live classes, even if they're virtual, to make sure that you do it and to make sure that you get all your questions answered. So.
Hey, Dawn, just an FYI, while you're on that particular screen, just looking down through your resources that are there, the Kathy Schwabe text, the current edition of that text is now at the 9th edition.
Oh, okay. So that's changed since we first did this.
That's now at 9 for the current version.
Okay, thanks. See how on top of things he is? It's amazing. All right. So there's some more learning opportunities I want to share with you. And by the way, so the CAP-M, so one of those is the prep boot camp. So we have some CAP-M prep boot camps coming up. Here's the good news for you interested in the CAP-M. No change. There's been no change to the CAP-M so far. So if you want to do the CAP-M, I'd recommend getting it done before the changes occur, because usually what happens is, if history is going to repeat itself, usually what happens is the new PMBOK guide comes out. So again, that said, May 1st is the current prediction. Usually once it comes out in like 6 months to 9 months, then the exam changes. So I wouldn't be surprised if January 1st, 2022, the exam changes again to include the PMBOK 7 material. So this is just, something to think about as you are thinking about what certification is right for you and, when to take it, because you will have, I predict there will be another announcement of a change to have it reflect the 7th edition, probably, next year. So now is a good time to get involved, because then you'll have plenty of time. They haven't even announced an exam change yet. That's just my prediction based on history of watching this for 20 years. And you could get in now, and then you'd have plenty of time to, nail the exam before that is even a worry. Questions? So what do I enjoy most about my job? Okay, as a project manager, the thing I enjoyed most was actually taking something from nothing and creating something. So to me, like, it was so fun in the beginning when a project sponsor and executive would say, hey, there's this project, and it literally didn't exist, and I had to kind of help him or her pull the idea out of their head and create that vision, and then work with the team to figure out how are we going to get there. That's my favorite part of the project process, and just, really supporting the team and helping them be successful. That's my favorite part. The piece of advice I wish I knew going into the professional world that I had to learn on my own. I love this question because, and I'm happy to share this with you. Okay, so I grew up, in Central PA. My father was a railroader, and his father was a railroader and a World War II Marine. And so in my house, these men said very few things, but when they spoke, like, they said exactly what they meant, and they meant what they said, and that was it. When I started to work with clients, as a consultant and inside the Fortune 500, is almost no one actually just says what they mean and means what they say. And I just was shocked by this. It was shocking. Like, I don't get it. And people would ask me, well, Dawn, what do you mean by that? And I would just repeat what I said. I'm like, I mean exactly what I'm saying. I don't know. What else could it mean? Like, are you confused? They're like, oh, well, I thought it might mean something else. Well, what else could it mean? I mean, and I would repeat myself again. I was so confused. So anyway, what I urge you to think about is that if you grew up anything like me, is that and I've seen statistics on this because I've studied this and I've done communication styles classes and everything, and taught them. And, we have that communication styles workshop and all of this, right? 7% of what people are saying is coming out of their mouth. Only 7%. Most of what people are saying you can read through body language and tone of voice. So get good at trying to read people. This was very, very hard for somebody like me. I'm still working on it. I still expect people to just say what they mean and mean what they say. So that is the one piece of advice I'm happy to share with you that was hard for me to learn, and it was shocking when I had to learn it on the job. What is the single most quality for a project manager? Okay, when I teach our practical project management course, there's a module called "What Does It Take to Be a Great Project Manager?" And the number one tip for what it takes to be a great project manager is leadership. So if you see a leader inside you, project management could definitely be for you. Single best thing to know about that. And there's a lot packed into that I don't have time for right now. But definitely, leadership skills, leadership development, all that kind of stuff will help you, be a better project manager. I hope that the 7th edition, what I went through with the 7th edition, the 7 facts helped, the person who asked about the 7th edition. Again, it's blowing my mind. There's more out there. There's more to know. It's not even out yet, but we will be creating the game. So if you want to get in on that, join me definitely on social, and you'll find out what's happening with that next. The best way to study for the CAPM. So another tip on this is, and I'm not trying to sell you at all on my game. I promise I'm not. You get a 7-day free trial on the app if you have a tablet or iPad. So But the best way to study is to study the process, because the CAPM is it's very, very heavy on the process. So go to, and I think I have it up, I can show you later, but just go to PMI.org and find, the CAPM on PMI.org and read all about it. And you can download the exam content outline and read that too. And you'll find that a lot of the exam is the process. And so if you know the process from my game, you'll know the framework in the process groups and knowledge areas, okay? You'll know the process by playing the game, and you'll know where everything fits, and the arrows show you the inputs and outputs. If you know that process, that's going to help you on the CAPM and or the PMBOK guide. And or the PMP, sorry. Yeah, because it's all based on the PMBOK guide process, and that's a big part of the exam. So definitely that's a big, big tip there, but go out there, whichever cert you're interested in. If you're interested in a cert, go out and read all about it, and then, decide what's the best way for you to attack the thing.
Dawn, in the chat, I put the link for the CAPM cert information. Great. And also the exam content outline link. Great.
Yeah, and on that CAPM page, you can see there are a bunch of downloads you can get, including the exam content outline. Excellent, thank you. Cool. How would certifications like these help you move up in a large company in a management role? Okay, there are some companies that are looking for people who have these certifications already, especially the PMP. The PMP is the most recognized project management certification in the world. And, there are others, like if you're in the UK, Prince 2 is quite popular. That's becoming more popular in Asia, but in America, especially, but all over the world, the PMP is recognized. So if what the PMP says to me as an employer is it says you have demonstrated that project management is your profession. The same thing with the CAPM. The CAPM is kind of like PMP Junior, right? Which means to me, okay, you don't necessarily have the years and years of experience you need yet to study to sit for the PMP, but you're saying you're serious. Like, this is what I want to do, and I'm serious because I went above and beyond, my university degree, and I got the certification. So that puts you, if there are two of you and one of you has it and one of you doesn't, and the company values it, then it shows that you're serious and about your profession, and that's a good thing. The job market is really, really competitive. So it can only help. It can't hurt. It can only help. Can you give a business experience of yours demonstrating what Six Sigma looks like? I have a Six Sigma story for you. I was a consultant in an information technology firm where, when Six Sigma was really starting to get to be like all the rage, and I was in between consulting assignments and then I had to do it in addition to that. And they were like, should we, create a Six Sigma practice? So I did all this research on Six Sigma, and, all the, some of the big companies were doing it. And we ended up at the DuPont Country Club for a big meeting. And a chef, the top chef at the DuPont Country Club in Wilmington, Delaware, got up in front of 200 people, let's say, and said, I'm not a speaker, I'm a chef, so please forgive me. I'm not used to this, speaking to 200 people. And he said, but we use Six Sigma in the kitchen. We even use Six Sigma in the kitchen here at the DuPont Country Club, because all of us, in DuPont had to do Six Sigma projects. And he said, let me tell you about working in a kitchen. Now, I had put myself through college as a bartender and a waitress, so I always knew that, there were rules when you stepped into the kitchen to go get people's food. You were not allowed to go into other certain places. There are fire and knives there, okay? So a kitchen is actually a dangerous place, which is what he was talking about. And he said, we actually use Six Sigma to figure out how to save money and it worked out really well for us. So they evaluated their processes and ordering, and because food goes bad, right? And if food goes bad, that's waste, and that's not good. So and the DuPont Country Club runs like giant mega events, where they're feeding hundreds of people all at the same time, which is really an incredible project. So that's what it looked like there. I haven't used it really otherwise myself, because it hasn't come up that often. However, what I did notice in evaluating Six Sigma projects is that some Six Sigma people don't ever know when to make the project end. And I find that to be, a shame. So they're just, they're basically Six Sigma is really about squeezing as much juice out of that orange as you can, but then you should be like, okay, stop, we did good, that's great, and then let's move on. So that's something to be aware of. I just want you to be aware of that. If you end up in Six Sigma work where, you should ask the question, like, when do we know? And you ask this for every project. How do we know when we can declare victory and call this done? How do we know when we can declare victory and call this done? Because otherwise, you're wasting your time. All right, so final questions in the last minute here. Have I ever used Kanban boards? Yes. And how often do I come up with, see them in an enterprise environment? I don't see them that often in an enterprise environment, but again, knowing all the tools for the job is really helpful, because then you can whip out the right tool to help. So I did create a very simple Kanban board for inside a chemical plant in the Netherlands once, because these guys needed a visual way to see what was happening, and it worked really well. And they enjoyed like moving their pieces from, across the board. So it was great. It worked out really well for them. Okay, how much technical knowledge a PMP must have on managing projects? For instance, is it okay if the people I'm managing have more coding experience than me? However, I understand the overall construct of the project and how it works, so I still can lead my team towards success. Yes. Yes, this happened to me. This exact thing happened to me, and it happens to all of us. So over the course of your experience with projects, the way it works is you do a project, you do well with a project, and then you just get bigger, hairier, scarier projects every time. And at some point, you start to know project management more than you know the actual technical part of the job. So like I was a software developer, and then I ended up accidentally in project management, which you'll learn more about in my manuscript reading if you come to that. And then what happened was, I understood the code for the first couple projects, but I didn't understand anything, about the code after that. I totally knew how to sniff out whether somebody was trying to snow me though. And that was really important, because I had done enough coding to know, what the things meant, and I could figure it out. And I could read I had a little BS detector that was working pretty well, luckily. And so that worked out fine. But yeah, you will be fine. And you lean on your technical people, right? But you always check that for sure that they're not saying to you, oh, that'll take 2 weeks, when you're like, that should take 2 hours. And you need to challenge them on that, because they will try.
Nate is a previous graduate, so he's actually an alumni. He's actually working in project management for the Air Force in Columbus, Ohio. Nate, Cincinnati, Ohio, around there.
Yeah, Dayton. That's
Dayton, Ohio. So he had just reached out to me about a week before we had scheduled this. So I pinged him and I said, Nate, do you want to join us for this?
Great. I'm glad you're here, Nate. And actually, Jeff in the story was with the Air Force. So.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invite. I did have one question for you.
Go ahead.
With PMP certification, I'm about halfway to the 3-year mark, 36 months to get it. Do you see any of those prerequisites changing?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't imagine they will for the PMP, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So just, just keep plugging away. And then the question I always have though is, do you actually have more experience than you think?
Maybe.
Maybe. So
Okay.
yeah. So when you're what he's talking about is, for the PMP, you need 36 months of experience. So that's 3 years, right? But and you can't use, there are certain things you can't use for your experience, like managing your own wedding. Like that's specifically listed as no, that's not counting for you. But I don't know why, because that is a real project. But nonetheless, they're talking about work experience,
Mhm.
right? But if you were part of a team, if you led any piece of it, if you were a business analyst and led, business analyst work, I mean, sometimes that stuff can count. So just want you to think extra hard about your experience and whether or not some of the experience you have actually would count.
Okay, so I could have more experience than I think, like in prior.
That often happens. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.